Let's bring on the Mountaineers. Goes around about the 50, the 10 to 5. A touchdown with Virginia. He did it.
He did it. That's with White. Beavers and he's gone. Touchdown. Tavon Austin.
As the hills of West Virginia resound with the sounds of Golden Blue football.
They want to have a 7-on-7 drill. We want to make it a fist fight. Nothing cheap, nothing dirty, but West Virginia football.
From the heart. Streaming. It's Mountaineer pride.
Once a Mountaineer, always a Mountaineer.
Leave no doubt tonight. No doubt. They shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue.
West Virginia is a special place. People of the state that have great pride in this WV logo.
Ain't no stopping the Golden Blue.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be.
And now it's the show brought to you by Mountaineer fans for Mountaineer fans, the Country Roads webcast. What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into Season 6, Episode 171 of the CRW podcast, here for our Houston preview and predictions. And here in just a bit, I'm going to be joined by my co-hosts Brad and Steve, and we'll break down the matchups against the Cougars and former West Virginia coach Dana Holgerson on each side of the ball there, and of course dive in with our key to victory and our score predictions for the game before taking a look around the rest of the Big 12 Conference and predicting some games throughout the Week 7 slate as well. But before we get there, we'll lead this thing off the way we always like to do on our preview episodes, and that's of course with a little bit of Mountaineer news. Unfortunately, this week we'll be leading off Mountaineer news with a bit of a heavy heart here with some news that broke over this weekend, as I'm sure most of Mountaineer Nation knows by now. But given the fact that it was someone that was so important and so impactful to us throughout Mountaineer Nation, I certainly didn't want to let this episode go by without, addressing it here on the podcast. I know we've shared our thoughts on our social media pages as well, but wanted to address it here on the podcast because it certainly bears mentioning, as Dale Wolfley was one of the greatest Mountaineers that, has ever lived, definitely a legend among Mountaineer Nation, and rightfully so. And of course, through various other groups as well, he lived a great life where he had a vast area of experiences in a lot of different areas, from being a tour manager to being involved in professional wrestling to coaching. And then, of course, where we got to enjoy him as Mountaineer fans here in the past decade or so, not only, being on the staff at WVU, but then, of course, being involved in, game day broadcasts, coaches, shows, and then most recently with his own YouTube channel and his own show, The Wolfman's Call, that I personally really enjoyed, as I'm sure a lot of you all did. But on the screen, if you're watching on the video side, you'll see the statement released from his family following his passing. And I'm just going to read that here from the family of Dale Wolfley. On a bye-week visit to his mother's home in Buffalo, New York, we learned early Sunday morning that our dad/Dale had passed in his sleep over the last 24 hours. We've struggled to come to the realization that this has happened. He was a loving husband, father, brother, and friend. He was a fierce protector and a lover of life, a larger presence with an even bigger heart. We would like to thank everyone who has reached out and shared a message in support of our family. All your messages have helped the healing process. He loved you, Mountaineer Nation, more than you could ever imagine. This state, this school, this football team was his passion, and he would have done anything for them. He supported the Mountaineers unconditionally. It was his home and his brothers he was cheering for. Thank you to all his WVU colleagues and friends that he worked with over the years, whether it was from the tent to the booth or wherever the job may have taken you. To all his supporters of his daily talk show, The Wolfman's Call, thank you for being there every step of the way as he ventured out on his own in a new world, as he called it. Finally, to all his former teammates and players, he loved all of you with everything he had. He was always worried he didn't do enough for everyone. He hoped you guys had as much fun as he did. We truly hope you enjoyed the passion and energy he would bring with him every step of life. There is only one way he would want this message to end. So thank you from his wife Kathleen and his children Stone, Vaughn, Maverick, Ranger, Jaden Oz, Tally Rain, and Kyle Isaiah Ray. Boom. Of course, ending it with the trade man statement that Wolf always used there. Got to end it with the boom. And definitely wanted to share those sentiments, and we echo those here on the Country Roads webcast, as we sure all of Mountaineer Nation now mourns this loss of such a legend in Dale Wolfley. So certainly wanted to pay our respects, and at the risk of sounding cliche, hopefully West Virginia is able to go out on Thursday night and win one for Wolf. And then next up on the docket, of course, in Mountaineer news, we got to talk about injury news. That's certainly a topic everyone's concerned about following the game against TCU and how things went down for the Mountaineers. Multiple players carted off, multiple starters out for the end of that game. And West Virginia, as far as those are concerned, sounds like Trey Lathan's the only definite that will, of course, be out for the remainder of the season, unfortunately. We'll have Ben Cutter stepping in at that linebacker role, playing that Mike linebacker position now. But as for the others, we're talking Aubrey Burks, the free safety that was carted off with the scary injury, Wyatt Milam, the left tackle that suffered the eye injury, and Thomas Remick, the left guard that suffered the leg injury, were the injuries that West Virginia suffered in addition to the Lathan injury, of course, against TCU. And as you see here, reported by Mike Ostie over on WVSportsNow.com, coming from Neil Brown's press conference, which be sure check out our show over on WVSportsNow.com, where you'll find all kinds of great Mountaineer sports content. We're proud to be a part of the Sports Now family of networks. But whether you're tuned in watching this video version there or on our YouTube channel, be sure to drop us a like. That helps us. If you hit that thumbs up button, it helps not only this video's performance, but future videos performances as well. And if you're a West Virginia fan, college football fan, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Helps us and it helps you, as it helps get more of this Mountaineer sports content out to Mountaineer Nation. But we appreciate you if you listen to the episode on the audio side as well, that you can find on any podcast platform you like: Apple, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, you name it. Just search for Country Roads Webcasts, and leaving us a rating there really helps us as well. But we appreciate you guys tuning in to 171 here any way that you are. And with that being said, let's move on with the injury update here. Thomas Remick, unfortunately, is the negative side of this, because he will be out against Houston this Thursday night. West Virginia will be missing their left guard for this game against Houston. So that will certainly be a position to watch, as Jaquay Hubbard will slide into the starting offensive line for the West Virginia Mountaineers. And along that left side, we'll be looking to see if Wyatt Milam plays that left tackle position. He's done a great job all season. Had to miss, the remainder of the game against TCU after getting poked in the eye. But Neil Brown mentioned he will be a game time decision, so really kind of unsure about his status right now. And then on the defensive side, Aubrey Burks obviously was the one that suffered the scary injury, carted off the field, but ended up being, one of the better case scenarios West Virginia could have had, with as bad as that looked, as it seems like Aubrey Burks has no long-term effects from that, and he will be a game time decision come Thursday night against Houston. They just kind of want to make sure everything's there and ready mentally, and he's prepared to go after you suffer such a traumatic event like what he had to deal with. Seems like he may be ready to go, but we'll keep an eye on that as well. If not, I'm sure Marcus Floyd would slide in to start there at free safety. They also mentioned the possibility of Malachi Ruffin sliding over if need be to play some safety, as he's done that in the past. And then Josiah Jackson, a true freshman, was mentioned in the press conference as well, as playing good at the safety position there that he's been playing here early in his career. So that's a bit of an injury update here on Mountaineer News. Let's move on to our final piece of news here in our Mountaineer News segment before we dive in on our main segment with Brad, Steven, and I previewing the upcoming game against Houston. But before we do that, we do know a game time for West Virginia's game against Oklahoma State. So let's close out Mountaineer News with this. And as you can see, shared from the university's official social media pages there just this week. So West Virginia gets on ESPN at 3:30 for the homecoming game against the Oklahoma State Cowboys. After they hit the road this week to play Houston, West Virginia will come back home after, a little bit of a lengthy break. They'll get 9 days off before coming back home, back to Morgantown on Saturday after, nearly a month away. They return to play at Mountaineer Field again against the Cowboys, and it's going to kick off at 3:30 there on October 21st in Morgantown. But there you have it, Mountaineer Nation. That will put a bow on our Mountaineer News segment here on episode 171 of the CRW podcast. With no further ado, let's get into this fun matchup that we've all been looking forward to, as West Virginia gets the chance to not only take on their former head coach in Dana Holgerson, but the West Virginia football program gets to face the Houston Cougars football program for the first time in history. That's right, first ever meeting between these two programs. Let's find out how we think it's going to go as we dive in on the matchups, provide our key to victory, and ultimately our score prediction for the West Virginia Mountaineers as they travel to Houston to take on the Cougars this Thursday night. All right, Mountaineer Nation, here we are with your main segment on episode 171, here to get into the fun stuff and talk about this matchup against the Houston Cougars. Going to be a fun one. Of course, we're going to get into our key to victory and score predictions after breaking down those matchups, and then we'll wrap up things here on the episode, as always, with our Around the Big 12 segment, taking a look at some results from this past week, looking at the standings, and then looking ahead to what's coming up this weekend in the Big 12 Conference. But before we get there, gentlemen, we got to talk about this matchup with the Houston Cougars. I know it's one that we've all been looking forward to. Dana Holgorsen, the former West Virginia coach, love him or hate him. Polarizing, I guess, is one thing you could say about him and his tenure here at West Virginia. So a lot of people, I think, in addition to, Penn State and Pitt, had this Houston game circled here on the schedule for this season. And I think for a lot of obvious reasons. Of course, we would like to have it in Morgantown. Instead, we get it on the road there at Houston. But how are you guys feeling in regards to this matchup? Just opening thoughts. West Virginia taking on their former coach here off of a bye week, coming into it, 2-0 in the conference and, now second place in the Big 12 Conference. Spoiler alert for the Big 12 standings later. But how are you feeling about this matchup with Houston, Stephen?
Well, I had every intention on, coming on this particular show and, talking a bunch of crap about Dana Holgorsen and how we were going to go down there and, use that as motivation and use, the quote that is now famous about not being able to recruit kids to West Virginia that you were going to win the Big 12 conference with. And, I had this whole big spiel, about how many of those high school kids are now on West Virginia's roster, and we're sitting at 4-1 in second place in the Big 12 conference. And then I watched Neil Brown's press conference and Dana Holgorsen's press conference earlier, and I don't know. It's kind of hard to be mad at the guy whenever he's saying so many respectful things. But also, a lot of guys try to retract their statements in these types of moments too, though. But I don't know. I'm pumped up for the game for obvious reasons. The chance to get to play Dana and obviously get the chance to potentially beat Dana, because you might not get that chance next year with the way things are going. But with that being said, I don't know. I think it's another chance for our guys to go on the road and play in a good environment and try to sneak out another win.
Yeah, sneak out another win on the road and another night game. It seems like all of our night games, or at least most of them this season, have been, at night. So West Virginia, should be well tested in that area. But Brad, what about you? Opening thoughts in regards to this matchup with the Fighting Dana Holgersens?
Yeah, so I think it's pretty obvious that we're not the biggest Dana Holgorsen fans around here. We've not been the most friendly towards Dana Holgorsen. And I like Steven, I'm going to come out and admit that, I don't think that I hate Dana Holgorsen as a person. I think that he left a sour taste in my mouth. But if I'm being honest with myself, up until the day he left, I was supporting Dana Holgorsen. You know what I mean? Like I was getting at the end of his reign, I was kind of like, man, if you can't do it with this team, you won't ever be able to do it. So I'm okay if you leave. That's kind of where I was at with Dana Holgorsen. And so, but I want to see us whip his ass. That's what I really want to see. I want to see Neil Brown just absolutely use Houston as a get right game, because nothing would make me feel better than to just see, like I said, even though it's not malicious, I still want to see us whip Dana Holgorsen bad.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, because I really supported Dana up until the end of his tenure there as well, when kind of, like you said, it ended with the sour taste, I think, because we thought we should have been in the Big 12 championship game there in that final year. And, arguably you could say that we should have been for sure. But I think what really rubbed me the wrong way with Dana was, his comments after he left, the ESPN article and stuff, as Steven mentioned a little bit earlier, talking about the West Virginia kids and the type of recruits he got at West Virginia and all of those things is really what kind of rubbed me the wrong way about Dana. Was kind of the way he handled things, after the fact, more so than anything he did while he was here. Because, as Neil Brown mentioned, in his press conference today, we did have some success with Dana, a couple 10-win seasons, one in the Big East, one in the Big 12, the only one that we've still had up to this point. Hopefully that changes after this year. We'll see what happens. But definitely, appreciate the fun times we had with him. But for me, I also want to see us go out and, get a win here. And I know that the spread at this time is kind of close. But as you said, Brad, I'd love to see us go down there and really handle business and this be the first game where we, win going away, because because of those things that he said, and because the fact that we have a lot of West Virginia kids that will be playing on this team, I think that would be awesome. And, as Steven said, it sounds like the team's not really using that as a motivation factor, but I think for us, among Mountaineer Nation fan base wise, it's something that we're really buying into, is wanting to see us go get a big victory over Dana.
For sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I do want to say, though, while we're talking about, of course, I want to go down there and see us, whoop them. I'd love to go down there and beat them by at least 3 touchdowns. That'd be great. That'd be ideal. But let's not forget, one of my favorite moments in WVU history, it involves Dana Holgorsen. A long time I thought, unfortunately, but it does involve Dana Holgorsen. That Orange Bowl victory was a monumental victory in school history.
For me, it's you want to go win the game, like that. For me, is just like
that too, man. That was a moment, but see, in that moment got ruined for me because then he took that down to Houston, and like that was his like main slogan. Like that kind of, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, for me, it was just more that he left the cupboard so bare. Like we knew he was bad at recruiting. But then it just felt like he like used our prestige and our status to just like convince kids to come here, and then, just X's and O's them, didn't really develop them, just kind of like let them be, and then picked up transfers. And
he's a guy that builds his team year to year, and no matter when he left us, we were going to be hurting because of the way that he was doing it, just kind of year to year. And so it's like, once you're on that hamster wheel, how do you ever get off?
It feels like he's done the same thing at Houston. He's just used the Houston name and brand to get good enough guys, and then he doesn't develop them, so he just moves on to the next batch, and it's just
And he's still using guys that he recruited to West Virginia that he's now got.
They've got 4 of our players on his team now.
Yeah. But like you said, I was a big supporter of him. I think we all were very, very supportive of him, even when the large majority of the fan base was calling for his head a lot of the times. But what really ruined it for me was, like you said, that last year when we were very much in contention to go to the Big 12 championship game, and that Oklahoma State game, it just left such a sour taste in my mouth because we had the game, won. But that to me is what really kind of, while I still respect him as an offensive minded coach, I don't know. I can't respect him as a head coach. It just never seemed like he could get both things or all 3 facets together at once.
Well, I think that it's,
if special teams ever deserves any credit under him for being
right,
good.
all 3 sides of the ball, as he always talked about.
Yeah, as I say, I want nothing more than to cover a muffed punt. Like that's all I want.
That'd be poetic justice.
Yeah.
Have it positively influence us. And I think that it's fitting that the team that we get to go face, our former head coach Dana Holgorsen with, is a team that's getting things done and winning games by, being physical and being very disciplined. Because I think, all the complaints that I had with Dana, that was one of the things that I always complained about over the years with his teams, is they were more finesse, never really had that physical hard edge to them, and they never were disciplined. You always had bad penalty issues and things like that. So I think that it's fitting that West Virginia has a team that's kind of the polar opposite of things that we dealt with during the Dana era that's going down there. And hopefully that makes the difference. And, is one of the reasons West Virginia is able to come out on top in this game, is because they are doing those little things right. And then us as fans can point to, you see our coaching staff now, they take note of these little things, these fine details, and that's why we're winning games, and that's why Dane is struggling, is because he doesn't do those little things. He thinks he can get by with just his great offensive mind and go out there and win in a shootout every Saturday versus, taking note of everything throughout the program and improving every little detail. So I think that if West Virginia goes out there and plays the way we've been playing, it's going to be very fitting and kind of satisfactory for us as Mountaineer fans.
And I think that, also like one thing Dan Holgorsen always struggled with was a mobile quarterback. So, it's just, there's just a lot of little things that are going to be, poetic to this whole game.
And they haven't really been able to, they struggled with UTSA. They got blown out by Rice.
They're down right now. They're arguably right now, you're looking at the team that's maybe the actual 14th place in the Big 12 team versus the team that was predicted to be the 14th place in the Big 12 team in the Mountaineers, which we all knew that prediction would end up being wrong. And of course, I think thus far that's proven to be the case. Hopefully that remains true on Thursday night. But, got into a little bit of opening thoughts there, gentlemen. Let's get into the matchups a little bit. Let's start off with the West Virginia offense against the Houston defense, because I think that that's kind of the weakness spots for both teams. There has been thus far throughout this season. Houston's defense been, one of the worst ones in the Big 12 conference. They've struggled against teams that West Virginia has played. And that's what's interesting with this game is you get the sample size of both teams having played the same two Big 12 teams. TCU and Texas Tech, West Virginia played, held them both under 30 points. Then Houston also played those teams, and they scored a lot on Houston. So that goes to show, Houston's defense has been struggling this year, and that's something that we saw throughout the years with Dana was defenses that struggled, but the offenses were really good. Has another high-powered offensive attack. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But in regards to this West Virginia offense against this Houston defense, coordinated by another familiar face in Doug Belk for Houston, what are your thoughts on this type of matchup right here, Brad?
Our offense versus their defense, man, I'm telling you, I think it's a get-right game for the West Virginia offense. I think that this Houston defense is struggling. I think they're on the ropes already, and I think that, our wide receiver group is set for a breakout. It hasn't happened yet, but I think this is the game. I think this is where we find it at. I think this is where we get it rolling. I think that is going to make us dominate, honestly. So I'm liking the way this looks, if I'm being honest. I feel like that's the only thing that we're lacking. The offense has been middling, but that's only because we haven't had a passing game. And I think that once you flip that switch, it's going to go from 0 to 100 real quick.
I mean, if you're looking at it on paper, this is the game that could be a get-right game when you're looking at the stats of Houston's defense thus far this season. So the Mountaineers, Neil Brown talked about in his press conference, save for, the offensive line where there is some question marks, as I reported there in Mountaineer News. Wyatt Milam going to be a game-time decision. You'll be without Thomas Remick, so you'll have Brandon Yates starting at left guard, Jaquay Hubbard moving into the starting lineup at right guard. But save for that, West Virginia is the healthiest they've been, especially at the skill positions. Neil Brown mentioned C.J. Donaldson healthy now. Garrett Green's allegedly 100% as well. And hopefully you can finally see your receivers make some plays in this one. Houston does have some good pass rushers off the edge. That's kind of what the strength is of their defense, although their defensive line in the middle has been suspect. And, the strength of the Houston defense is in the secondary. So that matches up for West Virginia well, that Houston is worse at run defense than they are at pass defense. Of course, they're going to try and force West Virginia to pass the football. But, Stephen, how are you feeling if they do indeed do that and West Virginia has to come out and throw it a little bit more than they have throughout the beginning of this season? Do you think they can still find ways to have success? Because they're probably going to have to, find a way to score at least 20-some points against the Dana Holgorsen team, you would think. But do you think as well that this could potentially be a get-right game for West Virginia's offense?
Yeah, I do. I think because, like you said, Houston is really bad on defense. They don't tackle well. They don't cover very well in the secondary. So I think West Virginia's receivers will have the opportunity to have a good game. And, you mentioned we're going to be without Tumas. There's a good chance we might be without Wyatt. If they don't feel like that he's going to be able to see well enough, then I don't think that he's going to be able to make it a go. So you might be forced to have to pass a little bit more than you want to, just because you're not going to be able to, to get any good run blocking going, to be able to, wear them down like you have been before. But I think it also largely depends on, a large part of the fan base has been really hard on CJ. And for a lot of I don't really understand, the criticism toward him so much, because I've seen countless articles about what's happened to CJ. What's happened to CJ? Like, last I checked, he's scored a touchdown in, if not every game this season, almost every game this season. I don't know. I still think CJ's running well, but I think it largely depends on how well he runs the football. If he can get it going early, then I think I think we stand a pretty good chance. But I agree with Brad. I do think that our receivers get it going a little bit more than what they've been able to in the prior games this season.
Yeah, I've honestly been thinking about, because I think that CJ's definitely had more of a down year this year. And I think that has a lot to do with just for me, it comes from his average. He was averaging over 4 yards a carry last year. This year he's averaging a little over 2. And that's just like really telling to me. Is just like, and it doesn't look like he's hitting the holes as hard. And I think he's getting worn down. I think he's become, he realized how many hits he's going to be taking, and he's seen what injuries can do. And I just don't think he's running as hard as what he once did. Quite honestly, I wouldn't mind to see him step out of wide receiver a little bit more. I just don't know why. I know you lined him up as running back all year, but you brought him in as a tight end. You're really struggling as wide receiver right now. He's 6'2". He's got good speed to him. Put him out there. You know what I mean? Let him just catch a ball or two, and then put Jaheim White back there a little extra. I don't know why that's not something you wouldn't think about if you just, why do you have to tie him down to running back? I know he's a hell of a one, but right now he's getting a little over 2 yards a carry. Why not try to get his athleticism on the field somewhere else?
Yeah, and I think he's also dealing with the fact that this season, every game, he's the main focus of the defense's game plan. I'm sure they know to load the box against West Virginia, so I understand why people see that he is struggling because he hasn't had a 100-yard rushing game this season. So I think that's something we probably wouldn't have expected 5 games in, and we also with that, wouldn't expect West Virginia to be 4-1 without him having a 100-yard rushing game. So that just goes to, give another credit to the West Virginia coaching staff. But, in regards to CJ, I do agree with you. I think getting him the ball in some creative ways would be good. And I think Chad Scott mentioned that, in his press conference this week as well, that getting not even just CJ, but some of the other playmakers, as you mentioned, Jaheim White, Rodney Gallagher, getting them the ball out in space in different ways and trying to find creative ways to do that is something that they're looking to do moving forward as West Virginia continues to try and improve this offense, because if they can improve this offense, they got a chance to be a really great football team. But I think I'm watching that left side of West Virginia's offensive line in this game. As Steven mentioned there, we're without Tomas. We may be without Wyatt, and that's West Virginia's left guard and left tackle. And a lot of West Virginia's big successful runs this season, especially explosive wise that they've had, have came off that left side using that outside zone stretch play with Wyatt Milam setting that edge. He's done a really good job. So I'm hoping Wyatt Milam, we said he's going to be a game time decision. Hopefully he gets to play in this game. If not, that's going to be interesting development. And I'm going to be seeing how that line holds up for West Virginia on some of those running plays, or if they tend to, switch things up and try to go to the right side a little bit more on some of those running plays. But it's definitely a story to watch, heading into this game.
Yeah, and especially when you got interesting guys backing up Wyatt Milam there, if you're looking towards the future and what could be for, after these guys leave.
Any other thoughts in regards to West Virginia's offense versus Houston defense? You got anything you want to add there, Steven?
No, I'm curious to see how GG responds this week too. Last week was a bit of a curveball in terms of game prep and everything with what happened to Nico leading up, and I just want to see how it comes out and plays, because I want to see if he responds in a positive way, or if, I don't know, it's curious.
Well, it's got to also, this is probably the most healthy we're going to see him versus a Power 5 opponent, since Penn State. So it's going to be interesting to see how he plays, and I think he really impressed me playing as well as he did not being 100% versus TCU, and, as we learned after the game, only having the couple days to prepare for that game.
Right.
Yeah. I just want to see him, if he catches like some confidence and gets some spark going, and we see, we saw a little bit of it last weekend, but if he gets any kind of confidence in himself,
yeah. Oh yeah.
I was gonna say, man, you watch for Nico to be leading rusher again, or Garrett.
Yeah. Yeah, it could very well happen. I think that he's shown that, capability throughout this season. What was 80 yards rushing, not being 100%, and then look back against Penn State, he had over 70 against them. So I think he's definitely a weapon West Virginia could use in this game, and someone that, maybe us as Mountaineer fans are sleeping on how good he could be for this team and some of the impact that he could make. And if we're sleeping on him, then you definitely know that West Virginia's opponents are probably sleeping on him as well.
Yeah.
For sure.
But let's flip it over to the other side then, gentlemen, because this is the matchup of the game, in my opinion. Like I said, that, first matchup there is one to watch for sure, because Houston's defense has been weak, but West Virginia's offense hasn't been, anything to write home about necessarily either. But then we look at this area, which is the two strengths of these two teams this season. West Virginia's defense, we've talked a lot about its improvements and how well it's done thus far this year, especially in Big 12 play, doing an excellent job there. And then you look at Dana Holgorsen. We know that offense is his calling card. When he was here at West Virginia, we were having to win games 50-49, 70-63, stuff like that. But he was fully capable of doing it and doing it in a lot of different ways with a lot of different teams over the years. Here he finds his pieces and knows how to make those work and rack up yards and score points. And it's been no different this season. Their defense has been struggling, but they do look strong on offense. Parker Jenkins, a true freshman, looks good for them at the running back position. Donovan Smith, another big quarterback West Virginia will face this season, the Texas Tech transfer, looks good there as the trigger man. And they have 3 wide receivers that'll really scare you. Joseph Manjack, Matthew Golden's really fast. And of course, we all already know about Sam Brown. Got to see a little bit of his talents during his true freshman season, and he's really come on there at Houston, leading the Big 12 in different receiving categories there. So when you look at this matchup here, what are you watching for this one? Do you think West Virginia's defense can continue to look as strong as they have early in this season, going up against a Dana Holgorsen offense that we know will probably pull out all the stops, with it being a night game in Houston, back against the wall, desperately needing to win against his former team? Do you think West Virginia's defense can still come out and perform the way that they have throughout the early part of the season, Stephen?
I do. I think there's a lot of question marks going into that side of the ball, even more so. I mean, obviously you have the injury to Aubrey Burks early on in the game last week, and you have the Trey Lathan injury later on in the game. So you're going to have Malachi Ruffin probably slide over and play that position for Aubrey, which he's played and started at before. So I don't think we're going to have a very rough time getting anything smoothed out there. And then you're going to have Ben Cutter come in and play. And I think he said Jai Favris is going to come in and play a little bit at that spot as well. So I don't know if those guys can come in the linebacker position and play that spot well. Then I think West Virginia continues to, I don't want to say dominate, that's a strong word, but I will continue to play very sound defense. But looking at their offense, I know they had the potential to put up a lot of points, but they only scored 17 against UTSA. They only scored 13 against TCU. I mean, obviously they scored 38 against Sam Houston. And then last week, still losing, they scored 28 points. But I mean, looking at it, I don't see anything any outrageous numbers that what we haven't faced in Texas Tech and TCU. You know what I mean? I think that those two teams had far more firepower on their offense in terms of what the numbers showed going into those games. So, if you're West Virginia, you're really not facing anything that you haven't faced up to this point in the season. And so I can't help but feel strongly that West Virginia is going to come out and play another strong performance on that side of the ball.
Good points, and I hope you're right there. I think the West Virginia defense is more than capable of doing so. As you mentioned, the injuries there, they're still up in the air. Aubrey Burks going to be a game-time decision. We'll see if they let him go already, after that traumatic situation in West Virginia's game against TCU. If not, you're looking at, Marcus Floyd, and then, as you mentioned, Malachi Ruffin could potentially slide over there too if necessary as well. Ben Cutter going to play at linebacker after the season-ending injury to Trey Lathan, who unfortunately, hate to see that happen, was getting a ton of quarterback pressures, was well on his way to a freshman All-American season, I do believe. But Ben Cutter stepping in there, and I thought, interestingly enough, in his interview, he's actually going to be playing the Mike linebacker position. They're going to continue to kind of keep things the way they were when Lathan was in there. So they're trusting Ben Cutter at the mic and Lee Koba at the wheel, and going to use them interchangeably a little bit there. But the one thing that scares me with this is you get the mad scientist Dana Holgorsen off of a bye week. So who knows what kind of crazy stuff he might throw at you that he hasn't put on film yet or anything like that. And I also think, in my opinion, this is the best wide receiving core that West Virginia has faced yet this season, and one of the better ones they'll face throughout the entire season, I do believe. So I think West Virginia's secondary has been tested, and they've passed those tests time and time again throughout this season. But here comes another big one this Thursday night, and hopefully they're able to pass it. But Brad, what do you think about this West Virginia defense against Dana Holgorsen and the Houston offense?
Yeah, I hope I get to see some Beanie Bishop versus Sam Brown. I think that'd be a really fun matchup to watch. I think it'd be really interesting, just watching them go at it. But, we've seen Dana Holgorsen's offenses. I also expect him to be going deep trying to make big shots. And I hope that, people like Malachi Ruffin and, whoever's backing up Aubrey Burks is ready, because Dana Holgerson's going to test them. And so, I have no doubt that they're going to score points, but I do think that Ben Cutter's going to do a good job. He does make mistakes. I mean, he's a true freshman, for heaven's sake, but I think just like the other elements throughout the rest of the defense is just so good that it makes their jobs easier. When your defensive line is playing as well as they are, and everybody else on the back end is playing as well as they are, even when you have pieces go down, it feels like we've got good depth to just slide back in and kind of keep it bolstered.
I like that word. Good word.
Yeah, good word. Good word, Brad. It's a good game for West Virginia's linebackers and, of course, the defensive line that's been so strong. And we've talked a lot about West Virginia's front seven and the good job they've done throughout this season, no matter who's been rotated in there on the defensive line, or whether it's been Koba or Lathan, and then Cutter at times, and going to be him more in this game. But I think it's a big game for them, because West Virginia is going to need to get pressure on the Houston quarterback there, so that they don't have time for those, long developing downfield routes that Dana likes to throw. Try not to give them too much time to develop, because if they do have the time, then they're going to hit on a few of those, unfortunately, with the talent that you mentioned there, Sam Brown, Manjack, and Golden. So West Virginia, I think, has got to hope that their goal is going to be to limit explosive plays as much as possible, because I think Dana's really going to go out there and try and go after them.
And Dana even said it in his conference earlier, his press conference, that he wished they would have gotten the chance to play this game on Saturday because their team wasn't banged up. But I think that, I don't know. I think he might be a little bit afraid of, what West Virginia has whenever we are fully healthy, even if we are a couple of men down.
Because, like I said, back on the offense, seems like that they're a bit more healthy than they had been. The bye week came at the perfect time for West Virginia, conversely to what Dana mentioned there. So I think that, and it's something Neil Brown mentioned as well. A lot of people are talking about this 4-1 start, saying, West Virginia hasn't really beaten anybody. A lot of these teams they've played don't have winning records right now, save for, of course, Penn State, who's having a great season.
That's going to change, I think.
Yeah, and I like to look at it on the other side of the coin as well, and I think Neil Brown alluded to some of this in his press conference. West Virginia also is 4-1, 2-0 in the Big 12 Conference, and really hasn't put together a complete game yet, especially, when not even just offense, defense, special teams all playing, together for full 4 quarters, but I think there's also been multiple games where the defense has played, one half that was okay, and then one half that was really good. So we haven't really seen West Virginia's defense put together a full 4 quarters yet either, and they're still finding ways to win games. So, the optimistic side in me says we haven't seen the best yet from West Virginia, and I think the best is yet to come.
I completely agree, especially when I was rewatching the rest of the TCU game today, and just how many interceptions we left on the field was insane. That you just had your hands on the ball in your lap, in your gut, and we just weren't, coming down with them. And it's like, if you even turn 25% of those plays around, then, you're completely changing the outlook of the game. And so I think that, if the defense can put a game together where it's not just been against, TCU either. We've seen them drop interceptions a few times this season. And so just like, that ceiling is way up there. We have not touched it yet, because we're still not even, you start talking about a couple interceptions a game, and then this defense is taking it to a next level.
And there's potential to do it too. I mean, like you said, I can think of 3, maybe even 4.
Chandler Morrison's a good quarterback, and he almost threw 4 interceptions.
Yeah, and they showed. I mean, and then what's their backup quarterback for Texas Tech? He balled out this past weekend too.
Morton, yeah, he looked really good.
Yeah, I'm telling you, those two teams are a lot better than what people are giving them credit for being right now, because West Virginia played so well against them in certain facets, and they did, leave stuff on the field.
That's, of course, credit to West Virginia's defense and the things that they've shown thus far this season. And, as you mentioned there, Brad, plenty of opportunities for turnovers that they haven't quite capitalized on yet. But the silver lining there is they're in the right position to make these plays, and you got to think sooner rather than later they're going to start making more of them.
It's going to happen for the receivers and our defense.
And then, of course, can't mention the matchups without including special teams. I think West Virginia's had a lot of success this season in that area. Obviously, when you're coming off of a game in which 2 field goal blocks kind of secured you a victory there, it's an area that's been an advantage for West Virginia throughout this season. But Houston's been good on special teams as well. And Matthew Golden, the wide receiver there, is a great kick returner for him. West Virginia's going to have to look out for. He's already got 1 kickoff return touchdown on the season. So look out for, special teams to, again, be an area that's going to affect this game one way or the other. And hopefully West Virginia is the team that's making it have that effect.
We're going to have to definitely cover the ball very well on Thursday. That's for sure.
Yeah, Sandy Lanes, which is positive because we've seen a more disciplined team this year, so it gives you hope over the last few years. But,
and they have covered well.
Yeah.
Yeah, save for, 1 kick return against Texas Tech, I believe it was. Coverage unit's been, very stellar for the Mountaineers, so hopefully that continues to be the case coming up against Houston. But speaking of that matchup, we've kind of broken down, each side of it. Now let's get into our keys to victory and our score prediction here on episode 171. All right, gentlemen. So leading this off with our key to victory, what do you think is going to be able to allow West Virginia to move to 3-0 in conference, get a win over their former coach? What's it going to take to get it done, Brad? What's your key to victory this week?
Yeah, for me, it's the offensive line. With all the question marks we got going on, with not knowing who's going to be out and who's going to be playing, it's going to be really key for those backups to step up and keep up the same pace that the offense has kept all year, because that's been our bread and butter. That's what's won us games. And, it's got to be someone like Zach Frazier really stepping into that leadership role and making sure that, you're 2 men down. You got to step up and lead even more then. So for me, it's got to be the offensive line, because if they have an off game, then, bad things can happen.
Great call there. And I think West Virginia, being a team that you would think has better depth, with Houston just now coming to the conference from the group of 5 level, hopefully that offensive line's able to, wear Houston down. And later in this games, when you see West Virginia really start to flex their muscles on Houston a little bit there, maybe in the fourth quarter, that offensive line starts to have that advantage that really makes a difference in this game. So I like that pick there for a key to victory. But what about you, Stephen? What do you have as your key this week?
I'm going to flip it over to the defense. I think that, our cornerbacks need to cover the receivers well enough to be able to at least semi-shut them down. I think they're going to make plays. Sam Brown's probably going to make plays, being his former team. We don't really know if you're going to see Tony Mathis that much, but, if you do, those guys are going to come out and want to make a statement. So I just think that West Virginia secondary needs to cover and, be able to jam them at the line. And if that happens, West Virginia has a really good chance of stopping them from scoring very many points, and West Virginia has a good shot at winning the game.
I'd agree with that for sure. As you mentioned, some of the former Mountaineers there that are on that Houston squad. We talked about Sam Brown a little bit. Of course, they do have Tony Mathis at the running back position. He's been battling injury there, as Stephen mentioned. Don't know how much we'll get to see him. Same goes with Mike O'Laughlin, who's the second string tight end for Houston. And of course, Noah Guzman, the fourth Mountaineer that's on the Houston squad. He's actually out for this game with injury. But having said that, I definitely agree the West Virginia secondary has got to step up in this game. I think I've made it clear, throughout the matchup discussion here, that the Houston wide receivers are kind of the area that I'm most concerned about in this game, because I feel like they've got some really talented athletes there. Brown, Manjack, Golden, and then they have others that they'll throw at you there that can hurt you as well. So West Virginia's secondary has got to continue to play great in this game for them to be able to come out victorious. So great pick there for a key to victory. And I think my key kind of goes right along with your all's, because for me, I think the key is West Virginia just to dictate the type of game that it's going to be, dictate the playing style in this game, because that's very kind of opposing forces in this game. Dana Holgerson and his team, they're going to want to go fast tempo, make this a shootout, whereas the Mountaineers, we lead the nation up near the top in time of possession. We want to slow it down, play ball control, play good defense, great fundamentals, and make you kind of make the mistake that's going to hurt you, and we're not going to beat ourselves and find a way to win in the end. So when you have those contrasting styles that you're going to see in this game, I think the team that kind of influences their will really has an advantage. So if you're West Virginia, you really don't want this to get into a shootout if you can avoid it. You want to be able to possess the ball, run the football like you have throughout this season, play good defense, force those 3 and outs, and control time of possession. So my key to victory is West Virginia dictating the style of play in this football game. So we've all three given our key to victories. Now it's time to get into our favorite part here on our preview show, of course, the score prediction. So diving in on that now, Brad, let me hear what you think. Does West Virginia go down to Houston, get the victory over the Fighting Dana Holgersons, and move to 3-0 in conference play?
I think the Mountaineers dumpster them 42-17.
Oh, Brad with the spicy take there, got the Mountaineers hitting 40. Okay.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think it's the get right game. I think that Houston's a bottom team in the Big 12, and I think that West Virginia is really starting to find their flow, coming off a bye week with so much reason to go down there and just establish yourself. If you falter once, everybody's going to stop believing. And I think people are believing. I think the team's believing. I think they go in there and handle the Houston Cougars.
I like it. I like it a lot. Hey, I'm not going to doubt you after, last time I doubted you. You said we were going to hold Texas Tech to like 10 points and we ended up holding to 13. So, I was doubtful then and, the team, proved you to be right. Hopefully they do the same again and West Virginia goes out and puts on an offensive showcase and scores the most they have throughout this season. That would be awesome to see, in a Power 5 game anyway. But Steven, what about you, my friend? Do you agree with Brad? You got the Mountaineers getting the victory Thursday night down there in Houston?
I actually do. I don't have them beating them by as big of a mark as what Brad does, but I actually have them holding them to 17 points just like Brad does. I got them winning 30-17. I swear I wish I had something written down to prove that I had that score in my head before we went on this show. But I promise you that's the score that I had planned to give you guys before we even started recording tonight.
I like it. I like it.
17. So I got to feel confident after, me and Cruz had the same prediction last game and we
worked
were
out well. That's true.
I got to feel confident that now me and Brad are going into this game about the 17. So West Virginia's just got to beat 17, guys. 17 is a magic number.
That's crazy because I got Houston scoring 17. No, I'm just kidding. No, but I do like that prediction, and I think that that's a good one. West Virginia certainly has the defense that could potentially hold him under 20 points, but I think, I've probably tipped my hand a little bit. I think that Dana Holgerson's talented when it comes to offense, so I'm a little bit worried in that aspect, especially, with a little bit of extra prep time that he has for this game. Houston playing at home is going to give them a bit of a boost probably as well. We've talked about the storylines leading into it. The coaches can say what they want, but I think there's going to be a little bit of a juice going into it because of that. With Houston being at home, I would not be surprised if it's the type of game where they start off hot early. West Virginia may have to, come from behind early and it'd be a game that where they wear on them late. That's kind of the thing, the vibe that I'm getting from it anyways, is that with the energy leading up to it, I expect Houston's offense to come out firing, maybe similar to what West Virginia saw against TCU, where they got to, be resilient and respond and really make some adjustments, into which they come out stronger. But I think they will do that as the game progresses. I think West Virginia has more depth. I think West Virginia has, the tendency to be more physical. I think they're going to do a better job in the trenches. It's going to be one of the reasons that they're able to, go on and win this game. So I do have West Virginia winning this game. I think, they're the more physical team. They're the more disciplined team. And hopefully West Virginia's offense does perform better than they have, in a lot of games throughout this season, especially on that scoreboard, because I think they're going to need to. I don't have them scoring quite as much as you guys. Steven has them in the 30s. Brad has them in the 40s. I've got West Virginia winning this game 28-24 over Houston.
I like it.
Drastically different scores there, guys.
Yeah, for sure. But hey, at least we're all three optimistic this week, all going with the win.
I'm right again.
Hey, if you do, man, you got to play the Powerball or something.
Let's not forget, you guys, who holds the record this year for picks. Not just West Virginia picks, but all around the Big 12 picks.
Yeah, I know. So with that being said, I guess I reluctantly got to get into the around the Big 12 segment here before we close up this episode, and we'll talk a little bit about Steven's picks from this previous week, which unfortunately he got a few more correct than I did. So with that being said, let's run down the scores from week 6 in the Big 12 conference. We'll update you on the current conference standings, and then we'll make some more picks for this upcoming games around the conference in week 7 here in our final segment on episode 171 around the Big 12. All right, around the Big 12 here, episode 171, of course, got to put a bow on this previous week's games. And of course, UCF and Kansas. That was a good contest there. John Reese Plumlee surprisingly coming in to play for UCF. Not quite 100%, didn't look like, and Kansas was able to absolutely manhandle UCF on the ground to the tune of nearly 400 yards rushing. UCF's run defense continues to struggle this season, and Kansas gets the win 51-22 over UCF.
As bad as it sounds, it should have been a lot worse than that. That 22 points is, just in the fourth quarter, second and third strings in. That was impressive by Kansas.
Yeah, it was. Kansas is looking good, man. They're a contender this year.
Yeah, they are.
And then, of course, the other game that was a bit surprising, I think, was Iowa State taking down TCU. And it's another game, as you mentioned there, Stephen, in the previous game. Iowa State really, led for the entirety of this game and were leading it, handedly, ultimately getting the win there. We mentioned how tough night games can be at Jack Trice Stadium, and that proved to be the case yet again. TCU starting quarterback Chandler Morris also injured in this game to add insult to injury for the Horned Frogs, who are struggling a little bit right now as Iowa State beats them 27-14.
Yeah, shocker.
Yeah, for sure. Did not see that one coming at all.
Like you said, Jack Trice is tough, but I did not see that one coming. Yeah.
Me neither. Which reminds me of the other upset that I completely ran over here on the schedule because it was the Friday night game, but that was Oklahoma State. We've talked about here on the podcast in the past saying you should never bet against Gundy. And I think I mentioned on our preview show that, that's something that I always say, but I thought that they had really kind of lost things there in Stillwater, didn't know what was going on there. Seemed like things were really in disarray. And then all of a sudden, of course, when everyone's betting against Gundy, that's when he comes out and really puts on a show. They go out and upset Kansas State 29-21 as double-digit underdogs. A big upset win there for Mike Gundy. And maybe things aren't in such bad state there for the Cowboys after all.
Definitely a great win there for Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I think they had some question marks earlier on in the year, and I'm not so sure that they have all of those question marks figured out. But, just like Jack Trice, Boone Pickens is a hard stadium to play at, too, with all those paddles going on the wall. So, I don't know. Home field advantage is a very, very real thing. Yeah, I'm telling you, I talk about home field advantage a lot when I'm making my picks, and that's why. Because home field advantage, it's not just in the Big 12 Conference, but especially in the Big 12 Conference. There are some tough places to play, man. There are some passionate fan bases in this conference. And it's just that's what makes it so hard to play at any given stadium you go to.
It's hard to win on the road in this league. It really is. So, that's why I think a lot of people were tipping their cap to West Virginia getting that road win at TCU, with all the extenuating circumstances that they had to overcome in that game. And, it's tough. It's tough to do. Kansas State was unable to get it done in Stillwater, unfortunately. But there was a team that was able to get a road win. And, of course, that was Texas Tech going on the road to Waco, defeating Baylor 39-14. And, Baylor looking like they're going to continue to struggle a little bit this season as well. Dave Aranda, I don't know if you can necessarily say he's on the hot seat just yet, but if not, that thing certainly seems to be warming up right now. They're not looking so good after just, being very competitive just a couple of seasons ago as Texas Tech goes in there and beats them pretty handily.
Well, didn't they just have a huge comeback win against
UCF? Yeah.
UCF, yeah, it was last week they had that big.
Yeah, last week or weeks, but then after seeing, UCF versus Kansas this week, I'm wondering how much of that is UCF's defense, really struggling, because a lot of Baylor's comeback plays were on the ground, and after how much UCF's run defense struggled this week, I'm wondering if that was more a product of UCF's bad defense than Baylor, but I don't know.
Yeah, I might have gave UCF too much credit myself.
It's a funky world in which we live.
Yeah, this is true. I had high hopes for UCF coming into the season as well, that they might be one of the best of the four newcomers, but I think the injury to Reese Plumlee has changed some things. And then, of course, no one expected their run defense to look the way that it's looked thus far this season. Hopefully they're able to clean that up. And then lastly, of course, but definitely not least, as it's the final Big 12 incarnation of the Red River rivalry. And what a game this was between Oklahoma and Texas, at noon on ABC. Hopefully you got a chance to watch this one because it was a lot of fun. Looked like Texas had the win sealed up there at the end, and then Dillon Gabriel in Oklahoma with an amazing drive, go down, get a touchdown, win the game 34-30, much to my dismay, as I'd picked Texas to win and Stephen had picked Oklahoma. Of course, he was right, so got to give you your flowers there, Stephen. Good pick, Dillon Gabriel, and the Sooners looking pretty good this season.
Yeah, mainly I wanted to say this. For one, I'm extremely happy that Oklahoma won, because it gives West Virginia, a little bit more on the strength of schedule. If West Virginia can find a way to go out to Norman and pull off an upset and win that game, then that is even better for West Virginia. But too, just not a Texas guy, man. Horns down.
Yeah, horns down.
And you mentioned it in our group chat. You said Texas is most definitely not back. I will say, Texas is an extremely talented football team.
They're good, though.
But like I said in that show, there are things that happen in these games, and it's not just this one, but every rivalry game, every big-time rivalry game that you will watch, most oftentimes than not, it doesn't, and especially when you got two undefeated teams ranked in the top 15 like this, you never really know, man. You just don't know.
Yeah, throw records and everything else out the window with it when it comes to a rivalry.
And I know they scored 30 points, but I'm telling you guys, this Oklahoma defense is not the same Oklahoma defenses that West Virginia has faced in the past. Because if it's one thing that I knew for certain whenever they hired Brent Venables as their head coach, was that their defense was going to be real deal at some point. And I think that I think that they're a very good defense and a very sound defense, because they don't miss very many tackles. And they are a hard-hitting group, and that's looking forward, that's one thing that kind of scares me whenever they face West Virginia, because while their offense is good, their defense is also very good.
Yeah, that's why they're really improved this season. That's what was, such a big surprise last season, was how much the defense struggled with Venables taking over. And I think this year you're finally seeing, more in line with what you'll see with Venables there. And I think Texas's defense was kind of the talk of the town heading into this game, and Oklahoma's defense looked like they took that personally, because they really came out and put on an awesome performance against that Texas offense to be able to be a big reason, in addition to Dillon Gabriel's clutch play, that Oklahoma was able to win.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts as far as Week 6 results, gentlemen, before we take a look at the conference standings as they are now before Week 7?
Makes that Oklahoma State matchup going into next week look interesting.
Yeah, definitely made our schedule upcoming look a little bit better.
Yeah, for sure. I think some different tests on the schedule that we thought, were looking like, maybe easy wins potentially now look like some teams that could be competitors and are going to give West Virginia a challenge. So interesting to see how that shapes up. And speaking of how things are shaping up, let's take a look at the Big 12 standings as they are currently here, heading into Week 7. And I think for Mountaineer fans, this is a very, pleasurable sight to see, and something that probably a lot of us weren't expecting at this time. But that is our West Virginia Mountaineers, second in the conference. Of course, the only other undefeated team in conference, Oklahoma. So yeah, number 2. That's not 14.
So where's 14th at? Oh, it's down there.
It's crazy. It's almost like, the media didn't know what they were talking about or something. I don't know.
Well, that's a first.
Yeah, but anything else? Any other thoughts you guys got there in regards to conference standings? Of course, besides our West Virginia Mountaineers sitting pretty there at the number 2 spot as it stands now.
I mentioned that, Oklahoma and Texas being on a bye week and how I was upset about it. But one thing that I do like is it'll give us a chance to get back even with that record. It's one thing that bothers me about bye weeks is the unevenness in the records.
Yeah, it's like you see that 4 and you just want to see that 5.
That's it. Like where we're sitting at 2-0 in the conference play, I just want to see 3.
Yeah, it does. It throws you off a little bit. But having said that, we've looked a little bit at the Week 6 results and talked a bit about the standings. So now let's take a look at the Week 7 schedule here around the Big 12. The other matchups going on, of course, besides the Mountaineers, which will open things up for the Big 12 this week with the Thursday night contest. As we said, they're heading to Houston. They're going to be a 7 o'clock kick, televised on Fox Sports 1 if you want to watch the Mountaineers on the road in a night game, taking on some familiar faces, whether it be head coach Dana Holgerson, some of the players we mentioned. There's also former Mountaineers on the Houston staff. TJ Simmons is a graduate assistant. Their wide receivers coach is DeKill Short. So a lot of interesting storylines and going to be a fun game. And I think we've covered that one in depth, given our thoughts on the matchups, our key to victory, and predictions. Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comments down below if you're tuned in on the video version, or you can leave those in the rate review section if you're tuned in on the audio side. But moving on to the Saturday slate of action for the Big 12 Conference here. Our game of the week this week will actually be Kansas versus Oklahoma State. Following the Oklahoma State win, that kind of shapes up as an interesting matchup. So we'll lead it off here with the noon game on Saturday, and that is Iowa State heading to Cincinnati. That game will also be televised on Fox Sports 1. Cyclones versus the Bearcats. Who do you guys like in this one? What are you thinking here, Stephen?
After last week and the Cyclones handling business the way they did up in Ames, it would lead you to believe that the Cyclones are going to be rolling. But I mentioned earlier how tough it is to play in Big 12 stadiums, and I don't think a lot of Big 12 teams understand how tough it is to play in Cincinnati Stadium. And I do remember West Virginia playing some tough games up there and it just being a raucous environment. I know that they're not looking very good right now. I know Cincinnati's had some rough ways to go. But I do think that the stars align this weekend. I think they get their first Big 12 win, and they pull one out.
Hey, not a bad pick there. Not a bad pick. I think, we were talking a bit about the newcomers struggling, but we were also talking about it being hard to win on the road in this league. I think that proves to be true yet again. I'm going to have to agree with you here, Stephen. Iowa State, of course, they're coming off a big win, so maybe it's a little bit of a letdown having to travel on the road and travel, such a long distance to Ohio. It's a trip that maybe they're used to making, traveling to West Virginia, but nonetheless, I think that's going to take a toll on you, especially for the early kick time there, which will be, 11 a.m. their time, going to be noon Cincinnati's time. But I like Cincinnati's defense. I think that they'll do a good job, and I think this will certainly be a low-scoring affair, but I think Cincinnati does enough to get the win. I'm going to agree with you, Stephen, but Brad, are we going to make it 3-for-3, or are you going with Iowa State on the road here?
Nope, we're going to make it 3-for-3. I like Cincinnati. I think that, like you guys said, they're going to get their first Big 12 win. I think their fan base is hungry for the first conference win in Cincinnati. I'm going to give it to the Bearcats.
Nice. So all in agreement so far on the couple games we've covered, the Mountaineers and, of course, that one. But then we're moving on to a 3:30 kick, another interesting matchup here, talking about those Big 12 newcomers. We get another one in BYU. They're traveling on the road to Fort Worth to take on TCU, which looks like it will be breaking in a new starting quarterback following the injury to Chandler Morris, and that worked out very good for them last season after Chandler Morris went down and Max Duggan took over in the improbable run they went on. But they could really use a win here. This game's going to be on ESPN at 3:30. BYU traveling to TCU. We'll let you lead it off this time, Brad. Who are you taking in this one?
Yeah, I'm going to go with BYU. I think that they look really crisp. I think they're looking like a good football team. Personally, I don't think TCU has been all that impressive, and especially now that Chandler Morris has gone down, I think he was one of the highlights of that team as it is. I think they've still got a great running back that'll continue to make TCU be competitive, but I think BYU is the better team, and I think they're still, even though they're a away team, I think they're going to walk out with the W.
Yeah. I can't really, put my finger on BYU yet this season, what type of team they're going to be. They're such a enigma to me, I guess you could say, because traditionally you think about BYU, they get things done, kind of the way West Virginia's doing things this season, run game and defense. And although their defense seems like it's pretty good still yet, it's interesting that their offense is really struggling to run the football. Next to no run game, they're having to get it done through the air. And as bad as I hate to say it, Keaton Slovis has been really good for them this season. However, matched up with TCU, I don't know if that plays into their strength. I like TCU secondary for the most part. I think Josh Newton's really good. They have some good players in the secondary. Bud Clark's got a few interceptions this season. So I think TCU will be able to do enough there at home to get the stops they need. And despite the fact it's a backup quarterback, I think, that helped TCU last season to really find their footing and, explode onto the scene when they needed to, and they really need a win here in this one. So maybe that's able to energize them a little bit. And I'm going with TCU in this one. I think they get back, off the schneid a little bit, get a win here over the Big 12 newcomers. But what about you, Stephen?
I actually like BYU in this one. I think, this past weekend, TCU just, I don't know. There's something going on down there. I understand Chandler Morrison went down, but I don't know. It just seemed a little bit, I don't know. Monty Bailey even wasn't himself. It didn't seem like in this past game. And BYU, every week I've picked against them. And I still want to pick against them because who their quarterback is, but they've come out every single week and proved me wrong. So, I think I'm going to take them this week. What are they? The Cougars? BYU Cougars?
Yeah, the Cougs.
The Cougs.
Yeah,
Got two Cougars.
Got a couple Cougars in the league.
You got a lot of cats in this league in general.
Yeah, that's true. We do now, for sure.
Good thing we carry around a musket.
Hey, good point, Steven. I like that. Yeah, you're right there. You're right there. So I'm on an island with that one, going with TCU as my co-hosts here, both choosing BYU. But moving on to the nightcap here in the Big 12 this week as far as Saturday night is concerned. And that'll be a 7 o'clock kick on Fox Sports 1 in Lubbock, Kansas State, coming off the surprising loss that we talked about last week to Oklahoma State, hoping to get back on the winning side of things, whereas Texas Tech, is coming off of a win there over Baylor. So Texas Tech looks to continue their winning ways. I guess it's my turn to make the first pick in this one. I think I'm going to go with Texas Tech. I think that, Kansas State, they had to go on the road last week to Stillwater. They kind of struggled. I don't know if they'll have those same struggles with Texas Tech. I think it'll be, a bit closer of a game, I guess you could say. But I think that Texas Tech's offense is really finding their footing right now. Kansas State, maybe isn't exactly the team that we thought they would be coming into this year. Maybe, losing some of the guys that they lost off that Big 12 championship team last season is hurting them more so than we thought it would. And I think Will Howard's not playing as good as a lot of people expected him to leading into this season either. He was really playing good late last season. This year has yet to be the case. So, with that being the case, as it has been thus far, I think that unless something changes in that department, Texas Tech's going to be able to do enough there at home at night. I like that home field advantage. I'm going with the Red Raiders. What about you, Steven?
I'm actually agreeing with you here. I think I'm taking the Red Raiders as well. I don't think Kansas State has shown me the firepower that I thought they were going to have. I really, coming into this season, I really thought they were going to be up there with Texas in terms of the way that they were going to be able to score points, but just doesn't seem to be that way. And I don't know, they seem to play to the level of their competition a lot, and I don't think that that's going to bode well for them going down there to Lubbock. So give me the Red Raiders.
Yeah, tough place to play there. It really is. It's a different type of weather there sometimes. We know about that, how crazy the environment and atmosphere can be there in Lubbock. Certainly a area all of its own. And, Kansas State going down there is going to be a tough place to play. So Steven and I got the Red Raiders getting the win for that reason. But Brad, are you in agreement here with us on the Big 12's nightcap Saturday night?
For sure. We're all right there on the same page. I think it's two teams with a lot to prove, but I just think that Texas Tech is making steps towards the team that we thought they were going to be at the beginning of the year, and I think that keeps going with this home win right here.
Music to my ears. Love it when we're all in agreement on the picks. And then we've got one more game to pick here. And, of course, it's our game of the week here in our Around the Big 12 segment, and that is the Kansas Jayhawks heading to Stillwater to take on the Oklahoma State Cowboys. 3:30 kick there on Fox Sports 1. Both these teams coming off of big wins last week. Oklahoma State, as we mentioned, getting the upset win over Kansas State in the Friday night contest. And then Kansas absolutely running wild on UCF. So both teams, kind of in a good spot right now. Kansas has been, labeled as a potential contender to reach, the Big 12 title game even, whereas Oklahoma State, we thought they were dead in the water. Seems like they may have life in this conference as well. So interesting matchup here for our game of the week. Who are you going with for the win here in this one, Brad?
Yeah, I think this is going to be an excellent game. Going to be really fun to watch. Definitely going to have this one tuned in personally. And, I think that Mike Gundy's going to make it competitive, but in the end, I'm going to go with Kansas, man. I think that they're a really good team, and I think that they've still got a lot left to prove. And, even though they're going into a real crazy world in Stillwater, I just think that in a close game, Kansas is going to get it done.
Stillwater's tough. We mentioned that earlier. That crowd's crazy, those paddles, all of that. Never bet against Gundy, but I guess I didn't learn my lesson last week because I'm going to go ahead and do it again. I'm going to agree with you, Brad. I think Kansas finds a way to get it done. I love the running backs, love Neal and Highshaw. I know Jalen Daniels' status with his back continues to be up in the air, but Jason Bean can do enough with his arm and make the few plays that they need him to with as good as their run game is. And he's also really fast and can use his legs as well. So I like Kansas to go down there and get the win in Stillwater. So Steven, rounding us out here, our game of the week in our Around the Big 12 segment here on episode 171. Are you in agreement with Brad and I that Kansas is able to go on the road and get a win over the Cowboys, or who do you like here in this one?
Yeah, I think Kansas really hit a stride last week, and I think that they really have found what works well on that offense, and I think that they're going to continue to do that this week. And I think more importantly, a couple of weeks ago, even with losing that game down in Austin, I think that they, they're battle tested in raucous environment. So I don't think that out in Stillwater is going to be anything that they can't handle. So I really do expect Kansas to go down there and get a win.
Great point there. Dealing with the environment shouldn't be an issue for them. And we mentioned it's tough to get a win on the road, but that just shows the respect that all three of us have to this year's version of Kansas. We all think they'll be able to go on the road there in Stillwater and get a win over Oklahoma State in our game of the week here in our Around the Big 12 segment on episode 171 of the CRW podcast. So there you have it, Mountaineer Nation. We've dove in on the Mountaineer news. We've talked about the matchups against Houston, provided our key to victory and our score predictions, and of course, taking a look around the Big 12 at the action from last week, the upcoming action for this week, and even updated you on the standings. But having said that, gentlemen, any final thoughts in regards to this upcoming game against Houston? Anything going on around the conference or anything that we didn't get to touch on that you wanted to throw in here before we close out in this episode of the Country Roads webcast?
You guys want to go win the game? Let's go win the game.
Let's go.
Hey, that's fitting. No more fitting way to close out. Having said that, for my co-hosts Steven and Brad, as always, I'm Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go Mountaineers.
If you really want to know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those